Box office top 10 this week, surprisingly starting at number 10, but it's still there, The Ballad of Wallace Island.
Which is doing, really well
In fact, it's back in the 10, actually.
Yeah, it's doing really well in little cinemas. I've spoken to two different cinema managers who run small independent cinemas, who have both said they could basically run for the next 2 months showing Salt Path and Ballad of Wallace Island back to back. Because those, for certain types of cinema, those films are absolutely packing the audiences in.
We'll come to Salt Path in a moment. Karate Kid Legends is at 9.
Enjoyed it very much. It cheered me up when I had gone in a very bad mood.
From the World of John Wick, Ballerina at number 8.
Another movie which is a total mess, which didn't mean that I didn't enjoy it whilst I was watching it. But in the case of Ballerina, unlike in the case of M3 2.0 Gun, if that's just like they just threw everything at it. In the case of Ballerina, as we know, it had this sort of tortured production history, and somebody wrote an email saying you can't get cross at a film because it had a tortured production history. It's not that. It's because it really, really is all over the place. But it has sections in it that I enjoyed, and I like watching Ana de Armas kick people in the head. And it's got about 7 minutes of Kanana Nanu, which I always enjoy.
8, so number 8 is number 7 in America. Our number 7 is Sitar Zameen Par.
So this is a Hindi language sports comedy drama film, which wasn't press screened. If anybody has seen it, let us know.
And here we go. Salt Path is at number 6, which must be Jason's best performing film other than Harry Potter for a long time.
Well, Jason is back in a new film that opens this week, which we can talk about later on. But Salt Path has done really well. I was reading in the trade press about the international sales, because there was always the question with Salt Path as to whether or not it would travel, whether it was a very particularly British film. But apparently not. No, it has done very well, and I think an awful lot of that is down to the performances. It's down to Gillian Anderson and Jason being completely convincing as those characters, and of course, it is a pretty indestructible story.
5 here and 5 in the States. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning.
Yes, all you need to know is do all your toilet breaks in the first hour. Once he gets into the submarine, things really, really pick up. But for that first hour, it's just talky stuff.
Lilo and Stitch is at number 4.
The let's remake all our favourite animations as live actions continues, and it continues to make money, which means we're going to see more of it. But, there we go.
That's also number 4 in Canada, and 3s here and there, Elio.
Which is the new animated Pixar, which I kind of, I thought it had problems, but I kind of enjoyed it. I saw a couple of articles saying that it was underperforming hugely at the box office, but I thought I quite liked it. It doesn't have the sort of the classic storylines of all the best animations. Again, there are some narrative issues with it. I kind of liked it. I thought its heart was in the right place, and I thought it was genuinely mad. I mean, there were sections, as I said before, I've never taken hallucinogenic drugs, but I was watching Elio thinking, well, I imagine this is what it must be like. So,
Murray Rogers on an email. Mark and Simon, growing up, I was a weird kid. I never quite felt at home, and I never thought I fitted in even amongst my friends. That loneliness and deep need to feel connected to others and things bigger than oneself is something I've experienced and is beautifully displayed in this film. I am very lucky that I did have supportive people in my life who were there to reassure me that being me was okay and that I was enough. Seeing a young boy go through something similar on screen spoke to memories and insecurities from my own childhood that I didn't even know were still there. Going into this film, I would not have thought that I would find cathartic healing in a film with a squishy worm alien as one of the two leads. And as we approached the final moments of the film, my 4-year-old daughter leant over to my wife and asked, "Why is Daddy crying?" This is a film I wish I had seen when I was younger, and I'm so glad that my kids will grow up with it. It is a celebration of weird kids and the creative, compassionate adults that they can become. I have seen that this film set the box office a light upon its opening, but I think there's a not missing from there. Anyway, but I would recommend everyone, weird kid or not, to check it out.
Well, I think the weird kid thing, I absolutely understand. And I think that, like I said, I think its heart's in the right place, because I think that it is a story about somebody trying to find somewhere that they fit in and discovering that the only place is in space with a weird space alien worm.
Number 2 here and number 1 in America is How to Train Your Dragon.
Once again, it's the live action remake of the animation. It was perfectly fine the first time round. I mean, it's nice to see Gerard Butler doing Gerard Butler because that's what he does. No one does Gerard Butler like Gerard Butler. But other than that, there is nothing in the new How to Train Your Dragon that, for me, improves on the original.
And number 1 in the UK, number 2 in the States and Canada is 28 Years Later. Just some correspondence
Yes,
here.
go ahead.
Let me go through this. This is our first batch. There'll be some spoilery stuff later. Christian Plum, long-time listener, first-time commentator. But I had mixed feelings coming out of my Sunday night screening, so thought I would share. This was an exciting, at times nail-biting, fantastically acted film, most notably Jodie Comer and Alfie Williams. However, throughout the film, I did always have the bothersome thought that this was only the first of a currently planned 3-film section, and in certain aspects you can tell. The way they've evolved the infected is really interesting, but they never become more than ideas, with the assumption we will see more full force in later installments. Additionally, multiple characters and side stories are picked and dropped sporadically. Thankfully, the film does execute and deliver a satisfying through-line story, which was my major concern going in. This is a film that had every potential in its behind the camera team, the cast, the IP to be its own thing or idea, even offering a poignant and emotional ending before tacking on a tonally whiplashing ending that serves an additional setup for the future. Lee Metcalf, all of it is wrapped up in a non-too-subtle jab at Brexit, isolationism, and a collective desire to fall on nostalgia and memory about the good old days which never existed. To me, this is an interesting point. I think, to me, the whole film plays like the antithesis of Boyle's own Olympics 2012 opening ceremony, which lauded all these things: Britain, pop culture, Queen and country, jingoistic pride. It was all there and illuminated as a positive. But now, in 28 years later, culture has stagnated. Britain is insular, overwhelmed by rage and alpha male masculinity. It is looking backwards to the past glories, but ignoring the horrors of those times, as illustrated by the use of Kipling's poem Boots, while juxtaposing that with technicolor shots of bright British heroic imagery of Laurence Olivier's Henry V. Ultimately, the film doesn't engage or thrill as much as the original, which felt lean and streamlined compared to this, which feels more unfocused. Here's hoping 28 years later, The Bone Temple, released next January, might recontextualize everything and help me reassess this odd mishmash of a movie. There's lots more, but anyway, Mark.
Well, I mean, I really enjoyed 28 Days Later. We're going to, as you said before, we're going to have a further discussion about the end. We had a spoiler discussion last time, and then we've now got your comments in, so we'll do that at the end of Take Two. The more I think about it, the more I am now really looking forward to the next film, which, as Danny Boyle said, is already in the bag. And I am hoping that we do get the third part, because there's a part of me that sort of feels if we only get the next part, it will feel unfinished. But whilst I was watching, I mean, I think I felt the same as you, that whilst I was watching it, I was just thinking, here's an interesting thing. I came out of the film and I saw, I think it was Robbie, and he said something like, it's just great to see a film, isn't it? And what he meant was, it felt like you were watching something that was really sort of grabbing your attention and was exciting and was, making use of the cinematic space. And I know there's been a lot of this stuff talked about, well, shot on iPhones. I mean, partly shot on iPhones, but the whole thing about the digital aesthetic of the very first film, that kind of slightly punky, slightly homemade DIY aesthetic, but here on a sort of much broader canvas. I liked it. I liked it very much. And actually, I'd like to go and see it again. And Child 2 went and saw it, yes, and really, really enjoyed it. And then we had a very, very heated discussion about the end, which was terrific.
Stephen in Belfast, I adored the exploration of the themes of how life would continue, yet culture would cease. Radios, online, doctors, for example, a concept bringing the dramatic irony to the end scene and the next film, where we, in 2025, know something that is not known by the characters 28 years after the early 2000s, bringing a whole new dynamic. Lots of this picked up in T2. Lewis Gibson says, what truly surprised me was the evocation of Derek Jarman's The Last of England. The entire film feels like a requiem to a dying idea of what England is and was, perhaps most emblemized by the burning of a shredded St. George's Cross. Images of typical English suburbs of the past are quickly juxtaposed to their current decayed state. Clips of patriotic knights and World War II soldiers off to defend their homeland all proved to be naught when we jump back to Spike's present day. Anyway, so there's a spoilery discussion of 28 years later, which continues in take 2. What a very good reason to subscribe.
Hey, Simon, apparently we've got 20 seconds to tell people how fabulous NordVPN is.
Okay, 1, you get access to streaming services in other countries. 2, you save money on booking holidays as well as having premium cybersecurity on your devices, and all for the price of a coffee a month.
To get your exclusive NordVPN deal, go to nordvpn.com/kmtake for a huge discount on your NordVPN plan and a bonus gift.
It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the description below.